Peace on Earth. Ethan Indigo Smith here, the philosopher stoned. Here we discuss the exoteric and the esoteric of all things across the entire spectrum, from the metaphysical to the political. We leave no stone unturned. Man, I should be a speechwriter for an actual show. That's not too bad. All right, so today we're going to talk about esoteric and exoteric through some interesting subject matter that happens to be in kind of the lane of esotericism. Uh, I would say that the mainstream, predominant cultural definition of esoteric is out there and hard to understand. In fact, that's, of course, not maybe nothing could be further from the truth. Esoteric is internal teachings, and the exoteric is the external teachings. So the internal ideas are more allegorical and more metaphysical, and the external ideas are more literal and more kind of basic. But that immediately brings into light a certain duality of polarity, if you will. There's internal instruction that's based on indoor teachings, right? Like that you got to be not a neophyte, you got to be an advanced student to get inside the center, inside the school. And there are lessons pertaining to internal structure, internal consciousness, internal settings, right? And same thing with external or exoteric teachings are outdoor instruction and external instruction, right? So uh, just let's let's look at that's the most basic way to look at esoteric and exoteric is through their actual definition and that actual comprehension. But let's let's get a little esoteric. um let's look at esotericism through what is kind of considered to be an esoteric idea on its own, but is really a foundational idea in a lot of different teachings. Alchemy. All right, but let's use another esoteric idea to look at alchemy. And in let's start with that idea. The divided line in the Republic. There is the analogy of the divided line, and it is a format on how to understand teachings and our own consciousness and reality, a way to consider and comprehend our own consciousness and reality. And the analogy of the divided line, of course, it has four parts. And of course, it's based on what I call the duality of polarity. There is the real, which is the main part of the divided line, and that is the tree, right? We're going to use the tree to explain the analogy of the divided line. It's again a highly esoteric idea unto itself. It's an indoor instruction, certainly. Um, and there's the tree that represents reality, and this tree is next to the pond, and in the pond is a reflection of reality. And of course, The tree is where the true substance of reality is, and we can learn more through the tree than we can through the reflection of the tree. The next duality of polarity, set in the divided line of four parts, um, gets usually a little murky. The best way I think to understand it is by way of the reflections. And it's the third part is sort of a reflection of reflections, of the reflection, rather. And that can be considered as a television show on trees. And when you're an arborist or whatever the other tree studying folks are, all of these are essential for understanding trees and the substance and what we can learn through trees. Uh, and the fourth part, again, is even more separated from the reality of tree. But if you're an arborist and so forth, it might be very useful to you. The fourth part is a show on the shows about trees, right? And this, of course, doesn't happen too often in reality by way of that exact example, but we can understand it by way of shows on shows, like award shows that talk about the best movies. It's a show on movies, or an award show that talks about other television shows, right? So the fourth aspect is a show on shows, which again, not necessarily the best way to learn about trees initially, but it might be quite useful if it's based on good shows and it itself is a good show, might be very useful for one studying the subject matter of trees, right? So uh, the analogy of the divided line is an excellent way to consider the substance of reality and how far away sometimes entertainment can be from reality, especially those shows that are on shows. All right, so let's look at alchemy by way of esoteric and exoteric, and perhaps using the analogy of the divided line. Uh, so, alchemy, of course, is science, okay? In the most exoteric study, the external teachings, alchemy is science of dye making, of metallurgy, of medicine, of X, Y, and Z. And the esoteric aspect of alchemy is internal development, an internal science of self development, of changing the mind, right? Because like metals, the human mind can be refined. And that is a huge distinction of us, and most other animals, right? How we're definitely distinct is that there's no setting to humanity. It's we can do whatever we want, whatever we're exposed to, whatever we learn from, and so on and so forth. So we really can refine our own internal metallurgy and our own leaden mind and leaden being into a more golden, enlightened being, right? So there's your esoteric kind of aspect. And then there can be reflections off of that. Well, one might study different movement, different herbalism, different any number of modalities to influence our body and change our mind. And there can be different studies on the tree of alchemy, so to speak, that you can partake in and learn from. And then there's different comparative and different subsets of information off of that. So I hope that wasn't too muddled to put those ideas together. But at the most simple, we can understand what is esotericism. It is internal teachings, internal relationships, heart, mind, so forth, and internal teachings. It's in the school, not out for everyone. It's kind of a select few of the learned, all get with prior learnings, get to take on the more esoteric teachings. Peace.